So let's just jump right on into it. We're going to be talking about Split 3 Season 14 Yasuo builds. So there's been a lot of changes, and right now I'm just going to throw up on screen the 2 rune pages that I have been using. So with Lethal Temple coming out, I thought that Lethal was going to be the only rune or keystone that Yasuo was going to be taking. But I think that there's actually still a lot of case to be made for Grasp, as Lethal Tempo is really good into dueling matchups, into stuff like Yones, or maybe you're going top lane and you're going up against bruisers that you're going to be fighting a lot, or tanks that you're going to be fighting a lot. I think that Lethal has a ton of value into any type of dueling situation. Or maybe you're going to be playing a split pushing comp, or maybe you don't have a lot of knockup on your team, so you're kind of forced to go into that split push role. Whatever kind of dueling position you're in, Lethal Tempo is the way to go. Now, I find that Lethal Tempo, while it is an okay rune, there is just a lot of struggle when you are going up against champions that have a lot of burst, or maybe you actually get really fed and you just kind of kill people off before you get your 6 stacks of Lethal Tempo. I think that this keystone can actually have a lot of waste on Yasuo if it isn't into the right enemy, the enemy team comp, or just in general if maybe you are in a position where you get really fed. I actually was able to build Infinity Edge in a couple of games, and I noticed that I was popping people before Lethal Tempo got to 6 stacks, so that extra damage wasn't really doing me any justice, and I didn't need the extra attack speed. I had Blade of the Ruined King plus my Grief, so I already had my max Q stacks. So at the end of the day, I don't think Lethal is always the way to go. So on the flip side, you have Grasp of the Undying. This is really good into team comms that you think you're going to get bursted out a lot. Maybe they have champions like Zeds, Talons, LeBlancs, and you're just never really going to get that Lethal off in either trades or just in general, you're afraid of getting bursted out. You want that extra HP. You want that early game burst just to really poke out your opponents and force them into a precarious situation where they can't be roaming all too much because they're too low on HP. I think Grasp of the Undying is still phenomenal on Yasuo right now just because the Bork Stridebreaker build still exists. And if you go Bork Stridebreaker with Grasp, you have a lot of tankiness, but you still have a ton of kill potential. So I definitely believe that Grasp is still effective as of right now in patch 14.19. And now let's jump right on into builds. So with the current Yasuo build, what I think is the best at the moment is dependent on Keystone. So if you go with Lethal Tempo, I have been leaning more towards a Bork into a Shield Bow build. The reason for this is because I think that Shield Bow actually gives you a ton of dueling potential. You get a lot of extra damage from just the 50% crit chance. And the fact that you compare that with Bork, where you already have the stickiness, so you don't need like the slow from Stridebreaker, it really gives you that potential to just out-duel a lot of your opponents. And then from there, it really just depends. So the Yasuo build is still the same for the first 2 items, Greaves into the Blade of the Ruined King. And then if you're going with Lethal Tempo, I highly recommend getting Shield Bow next, and then from there, it is all situational. I have been going 3rd item Stridebreaker, and I have tried a couple of other items. I've tried Infinity Edge, I've tried Mortal Reminder. There are a couple of items that you can definitely lean into, but right now, I definitely favor the Blade of the Ruined King after your Greaves into the Shield Bow into the Stridebreaker. Now, if you are going Grasp, on the other hand, I think you actually flip the second items. So you're going to go Greaves, you're going to go Bork, and then after your Bork, you're going to go Stridebreaker into Shield Bow. Now, the reason I think these items are still extremely effective is, one, even though Greaves and Bork got nerfed, I believe Shield Bow did not get touched. And the item did get a buff where the shield is extremely massive. So again, I think that somewhere in your build, you're going to want to incorporate Shield Bow, and it really just depends on your runes. If you go, again, Lethal, you want to get Shield Bow as a second item, and then if you're going with Grasp, you want to get Stridebreaker as a second item. So again, it just really all comes down to situation, what keystones you're taking, and of course, just every game, you want to make sure that you are taking into account every single variable. And then from here, the other 3 items are absolutely situational. So there's definitely still room to be had for Infinity Edge. I think the item is extremely strong, even though it is super expensive. It is, in terms of being strong, giving Yasuo, of course, that extra damage. And I think that if you are carrying, if you have a ton of knockup on your team and you are doing a lot of damage and you are super fed, then just going right into your Infinity Edge is a completely fine option as like a 4th, 5th, or 6th item. There's nothing wrong with capping out your 100% crit chance and of course getting that extra damage from the Infinity Edge passive. The other items that I've been leaning towards a lot are items like Mortal Reminder. You can also get items like Death Dance, Guardian's Angel, and of course you can still go with stuff like Wit's End if they have a lot of AP. You can still get Mercurial Scimitar if you need any type of CC reduction thanks to the QSS. And really, I find myself just leaning towards any of these items. I haven't really touched a lot of items outside of the ones that I recommended for 4th, 5th, or 6th, just because I still think that they fit into Yasuo's build extremely well. And you can make an argument for certain tank items, but personally, I'm not trying out any tank items, so I can't say for certain. I think I've dumped around 11 games so far this season, and all of the items that I have listed are items that I have built, attempted to build, or have found situations where I'm like, yeah, I definitely could have purchased that item. So again, for 4th, 5th, or 6th items, Infinity Edge, you can go with Guardian's Angel, Death Dance, you can go with Mercurials, Wit's End, anything along those lines. So I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, but I wanted to make this video as quick as possible. It's basically an unofficial guide. I think as the season continues, I will try my best to try out more builds, watch more Yasuo players, making sure that I'm trying to stay up to date with the meta. But as of right now, these are the best items that I basically have had the most success with. Even in games where I'm kind of losing early, I still think there's a lot of comeback potential with a lot of these items like Shield Bow and Stridebreaker, just because they give you that extra survivability that Yasuo normally wouldn't have by just going like Infinity Edge or something. So definitely believe that right now, these are the builds that feel the best on Yasuo. So there you guys have it. That is what I believe so far to be the best build for Yasuo in Split 3 of Season 14. If you guys have any recommendations for me to try certain items or anything, let me know and I'll give it a shot. But as of right now, again, the success that I've had for the first 3 items are Greaves, Shield Bow, and Stridebreaker, and then the rest is just completely situational. So again, let me know what you guys are trying out. Let me know if you see other Yasuo players doing different things, and maybe I'll give it a shot too. But with all that being said, I love you guys. Can't wait to see you all in the next one. As usual, take care, and of course, peace out.